G'day folks. Well, I'm going to do an updated review on the car. I think the last one I did on the car was a 3 or 4 part series, and that was a couple of years ago, but I think it's really deserved, or I really need to do it now because the changes that this car's gone through are quite phenomenal, really. It's not the same car I had 5-6 years ago, guys. It's just had so much attention to detail. It's quite phenomenal, really. And I really want to, I want to share it with you guys, and you may learn something, may not, but it's entertainment. That's what it's all about, guys. I hope you enjoy my little review on it all. Well, it is a 1975 model HJ GTS Holden Monaro, a sedan, so 4 doors. Quite popular here in Australia, 4 doors, not so much in the States. Now, we're still running the factory block that Holden bought out with this particular model. It's a 308 cubic inch. Now, this has had the stroker crank put in it, so we've lifted it up to 355 cubic inch. Thereabouts 12 mil more stroke, roughly. It's a 30 thousandths up from the 4-inch bore. It's got the Forge pistons in it, which are, what are they, the breed of them? SRPs. We've got the Scat H-beam rods. We've got a Scat cast steel crank. It's 2-bolt main, but we're running a girdle, steel, I think it's a 5 or 6 mil steel girdle. The block's been heavily modified with the oiling system to give it some sort of priority oiling mod in it. They do suffer from, and they can suffer from number 5 and 6 rod failure. I think it may be number 6 rod failure, bearing failure, because of the way the oiling system is not very prioritised. Well, now it's a completely different ball game now with what I've done. I've got videos on that too. It's a heavily modified ported standard volume oil pump. We've got again a heavily modified sump in it. I've done videos on all this, guys. You've only got to go back and look through it all. And we've got a capacity of around 9.8 litres of oil. We've got a modified pickup leading into the sump. We've got external scavenge oil lines that run through from the back of the heads into a scavenge pump and then gets directed straight into the side of the sump. So we don't have any fear of overfilling the heads because I don't have any restrictors with the push rods. I firmly believe that a good flow of oil should be delivered to cool the valve train down. We've got, what are they? Yellow Terra -3 aluminium heads on it, which is an Australian made aftermarket head. It's a high port design. As you can see the spacer here, we lift the manifold up around 22 mil to get a bit better angle into the combustion chamber. Beautiful set of heads. They do say they're 490 out of the box, but I have heard people getting around 460 horsepower out of these set of heads normally aspirated. So they've got a small chamber design, not a big valve in them, but they work incredibly well with the 355 cubic inch stroker. Unbelievable throttle response. Now we've got the Edelbrock single plane Torque manifold, low rise. It's a quick fuel gas blow through carb, which has been converted to E85. Works incredibly well. I run a 4-10 lines as my crankcase breather system. This has been a work in progress for the last 5 years and works incredibly well. This is a vacuum pan style crankcase breather setup. Like the Mr. Gasket old school type that you had for drag racing, if you hooked them up, the pipes, the breather pipes on a certain angle off your header pipes, creates a vacuum. Google it if you don't know anything about it. Well, I've done this to my turbo setup and it works incredibly well. Venturi pulls out all the crankcase gases. Once the revs pick up, it increases the airspeed and it creates a great suction. Works incredibly well, that. I am so happy with it. I always used to push the dipstick up out of it. None of that problem anymore. I could always smell the fumes because I had it routed out at the front here, so that's another benefit now. I don't get any smell of the engine. It's just been an absolute awesome design. Done videos on that too, guys, so check that one out if you're not up with it. Now this carb hat is a work of art. I had a local fella that's on the mainland that incredible skill with fabrication, came up with this beautifully well thought out design, and it works incredibly well. It really does. I had a different style carb hat on it and I was running lean in certain cylinders, and now we've got great distribution right through the whole range. We only get a sort of a 50-degree temperature difference from front to rear, and that works really well. The charge pipes are 2.75 size, and the ignition system is an MSD. This is just a new addition. It's a HVC, sorry, 2 coil. The distributor is just an electronic distributor, but it's been locked off inside, and we don't run any module or anything in it now. It's all that is just a trigger. Just use that to trigger the signal for the input of the MSD 6AL2, which is the ignition box. Fantastic ignition box, this one. It gives you a lot of flexibility, a lot of tuning as far as timing control goes. It's incredible, it really is. I run an ICE ignition, and these are only a new edition. Australian made ICE Ignition Pro 100 series leads. Very, very low ohm resistance. They say around 100 ohms. I think it's per metre, not sure. But the other ones I had were ridiculously high ohms. They were up around 2,000 ohms. So beautiful set of leads. I run NGK plugs, number 7s, and around a 25 thousandths plug gap. The block has been grouted to the bottom, and I'll show you roughly where it's been grouted to. I call it a low tide, so it's only been grouted to the bottom of the Welsh plug. The next time I do it, I'm actually going to the top of the Welsh plug. So that's just to give it some stability down below of the cylinder area. Good for harmonics, and it's fantastic because we're running E85, guys. We don't have an issue as far as, well, it's completely different over pump fuel. It's completely different cooling ability. We don't see any big temperatures in the motor now. It's been an incredible fuel to date. I'm running an aluminum 2 core, so that's they've got elongated cores in it, so they're very long, incredibly long inside the in the tank here. Whereas the old traditional ones were very short. Now often you'll see a 3 core or even a 4 core. So we've got a lot of surface area for heat exchange going on. I'm running a oil cooler as well. I think that one looks to me, if I had to say, around 300 mil by 400 mil. And it's all done down there with a sandwich plate to redirect it through the cooler. I've got a modified sump in there. It holds upwards of nearly 10 litres, so 9.8 litres of capacity, combined with the oil evacuation out of the heads with the scavenge pump. It's a really good system. I've had no issues with oiling whatsoever with this engine. It's just been incredible. I've got a homemade splitter that I fabricated up maybe 18 months ago, 2 years ago. Works incredibly well. I had a lot of issues at high speed around the sweeper on my local track. The car would lift up. We get too much air under the car and it'd just make it feel horrible. We made that first off and that really settled the car down. And then later on I made this, it's a brake duct. So from that point through to that corner there, this whole section is feeding one side of the car. So we get an amazing amount of cool air blasted in through our disc, and brake fade at the minute hasn't really come into place since putting that brake duct on. It's done an amazing job. I run a 330mm rotor with a 2-piston AU Ford PBR aluminum caliper. I've got some really good pads in there at the moment. They're a little bit hard on the disc, but they're incredible. I don't get any fade. I get very minimal dust. I've hardly worn them out, and I've had them in there probably over 12 months, 12 maybe 18 months, and they've been amazing. They really have. I'm running the factory still on the rear of the car, a drum brake system in it still, but I've got some really top-notch quality brake shoes in it that I had Crowd in the Mainland made for me, and I was chewing them out every few months. But now they've lasted. I've had them over 12 months, and I would have said I've worn about a third off them. They're awesome, incredible brakes. They've been, the drum itself's all been drilled out with a 6mm drill, spaced right out around the actual surface area with the shoe contacts on. So we're getting a little bit of ventilation through that. The backing plate's been heavily, well, not heavily, but it's been opened up so we get some air flow through it. But that's for another day. That's one of my jobs I'm going to do next, is a disc brake rear conversion. The wheels are 17 by 10 on the rear and 17 by 9.5 on the front. It's a GDS replica. There is an American wheel, and they were made back in the early 2000s. The company now don't even make them anymore. I've been searching, and I just can't find anything that's similar to this or the same. I've got 5 rims, so I'm very lucky to have a spare rim. Now the transmission, guys, is a Turbo 350 Auto. It's got a 2.5 stall converter in it. It's a stage 2. It's actually rated up to around 650 horsepower, and it was done by a Wholesale Transmission. And that transmission's been in the car for about 8 years, and it's been incredible. It really hasn't missed a beat. Awesome transmission. I've got a deep pan on it. I've got some I think they're dash 8 transmission line through to a ducted cooler, which I wonder if you can see in under there. Let's see if I can show you. Hang on, guys, there it is. There's a ducted cooler there, works incredibly well. Temperatures are not an issue with this car. We run a fairly tight little converter, so we're not flaring much. The fuel system is Aeromotive. Now I've got an Aeromotive A1000 pump in the rear. We've got an Aeromotive regulator up the front. I'm not sure of the part number of that one, but it's a rising rate fuel reg, and we run 2 -6 lines through to the carb. We run a nice big -10 feed, and we've got a -8 in under there return. You can just see it. Where is he? All this braid, it's everywhere. Yeah, there it is. You can just see it. That's the return. Excellent fuel system. Brilliant. They've rated up to about 1,000 horse. It'd probably pull this fuel system up, but works perfect for the power level that I'm making at the moment. I've got a fuel pressure gauge mounted just in front of the scuttle panel there, so I can sort of keep an eye on the fuel pressure, make sure it's rising. And that's been one of the best things, is a good fuel system. There's just no doubt about it to survival. It's awesome. I run a Blacks rack. Now this is the original rack that Graham Black developed, and he sold his business off. But these are awesome power steering racks, rack and pinion system. It retains the factory power steering pump. And I tell you now, guys, if it wasn't for that power steering rack, there is no way I'd be racing around doing what I'm doing with the car, because it really makes it so direct, and it's just so awesome. It really is. It makes it feel like a modern car in the steering department, and I love it. The shocks I run on this too, guys, are Bilstein shocks. They're Pettis springs. That's something I'm going to enhance on down the track. I feel it's a little bit soft in the suspension, the spring rate, but that's, like I said, something down the track I will play with. Of course, let's have a look at the turbo. This is probably my favourite spot. This is I'm going to call this a cabin mount turbo, because technically I wouldn't set its rear mount anymore. Now, I've mounted obviously in the rear seat area. I've made a box up for this. It's a GT42, so it's a 75mm compressor wheel with a 82mm turbine wheel, and it's a 1.01 housing. So it's a 4-inch downpipe from the turbine. This turbo is rated to 1,000 horse. It's a journal bearing. You can get built compressor wheels for them, obviously, to push you up a little bit higher, but my power level, this turbo is perfect. I'm getting full boost around 3.2, 3.3 with this 355, and it's been a beautiful little setup. I've got the hot side mounted in the box, and as you can see, that's an intercooler I've mounted in there. And what I've gone and done, I pick up air. I'll show you where I start from. There it is there. Now we've got a nice big scoop that feeds air into the 6-inch pipe that comes up through the floor and forces its way in through to this intercooler box heat exchange unit that I've fabricated. Pressures in through the bottom, forces it up through the intercooler, and as it comes out through the top, we use that expelled air again to keep some airflow going through the hot side of the turbo. So that is a really good system. It works really well. The car stays incredibly cool inside, because we do get an awesome amount of air come through the front area. Now we've got rid of all the dash and all that stuff that was in the front of it originally. and we've got to run with the window closed though, because the force of the air coming into the car, once it pressurizes, it just starts to push on this and I can't wind it back up. So we keep the window closed, and that helps feed the the air filter that feeds the turbo and keeps that turbo box cool from the ram air effect that we get through the piping. And like I said, it keeps incredibly cool. It's amazing. I will say though, when I pull up on a hot day, I've got to open the doors up, because if you're not moving, it starts to get pretty warm in here. So that's just one little sacrifice that I've lived with, and it's been no hassle. I've got a drain box, as you can see down in there, a good sized drain. I've got a 3/4 inch inside diameter. I'm not even sure if you can see that. I might be able to. There it is there, 3/4 inch out of the bottom of the turbo, straight into the box. We've run a breather pipe from the box, and we've got a scavenge pump mounted in underneath the car, and that returns the oil back to the engine. And it's been a really, really good system. I'm running you can see that little braided line down there. Well, that's the turbo oil feed. And that feeds the oil to the turbo. And then obviously, like I said earlier, we've got the drain box. And that is awesome. It really works really well. So we don't get any oil come through the charge pipe. We don't get any smoke sort of billowing out. It just works really well. Very happy with the system. Now these cars, the H series of the Holdens, run a triangulated rear suspension setup in it. Now when you go swapping out diffs, this has obviously got a 9-inch diff in it. It changes all the it changes the height of the rear top arms, and it really makes them handle terrible. But I've remodified all this and lengthened these top arms, and I've raised them up level because I've dropped the car so much. We get incredible no drivetrain issues as far as pinion angle goes now, whereas the diff wanting to nose up and down when the car went up and down. It's just incredible. And I'm running a panhard rod, and that really stiffens the rear up. Keeps the takes it takes all the work off those top triangulated arms, guys, because they're not a really good design in my opinion. But now the suspension works incredibly well, and the car feels so good. Just doing those couple of modifications, it's bloody amazing. Right, inside the cockpit, it's pretty basic really. I didn't want to get too... The theme of this car, guys, was to keep things simple and easy to work on. I don't want to get too sort of technical with it all. And so we've got a few basic gauges. We've got an Innovate, air fuel. You can record with it. That's a great little tool for keeping an eye on air fuel ratios. We've got oil pressure, water temperature, boost pressure. We've just got the top button there is the ignition. The second one down you pull out, that's for the fuel pumps, and obviously the starter. We monitor transmission pressure, very important. We don't it's line pressure. We don't spike or anything because we can create thrust, excessive thrust. Been all through that, guys. And a tacho. We've got the boost controller there. We're running at the moment 7 pound on wastegate. I can easily put a ball and spring in that and double the boost without an issue. Works incredibly well. It's just fantastic. We've got a chrome moly roll cage that I had a guy up in Queensland fabricate for me as a kit. And I welded it all in myself. Works really well. Love it. Awesome. It's made a big difference too, guys. With the stiffening up the car. It's actually a really good thing. I love it. We've got the 4-inch downpipe coming straight out the door. It was one of those things, guys, with that downpipe. When I did it, I almost regretted it, but no, I don't. It's the best thing ever. It's really grown on me now. I absolutely love it. That's the Vacupan pipe I was talking about earlier. God, that works well. That was an absolute win, that. I'll show you inside the box. The diff's a 9-inch, like I said, and it's got 3/7 full spool in it too. 31 spline axles, by the way. So as air gets blown through, and then evacuates out through the bottom of the car. Works incredibly well. I love it. Keeps the turbo sort of fairly cool without getting too hot. And what a great setup. I love that setup. The reason I did that setup, guys, was to try and get some weight, or shift the weight around, because the left-hand side of the car was around 20 kilo lighter, than the driver's side, which is the right-hand side. So by moving the turbo from originally where I had it behind the diff and bringing it inboard on the wheels, but putting it on this side, it's done wonders. For spool, it's simplified everything. It's cut down on weight because I don't have as much exhaust system. It's put the weight of the turbo and all this sort of where I want it. It's been an absolute win. I absolutely love it. One of the little latest additions I did do to it, guys, was the little NASCAR inspired wing. That is an amazing wing. That it really works really well. I couldn't believe it the first time I started going around the sweeper. I thought that it actually smoothed out the track. That's how good it was. It settles it down. It stops it jumping up and around, because that sweeper, when you're touching 200 k's an hour, the car starts to move, and it was becoming a little bit uncomfortable. Well, now it just feels so good. And that's a 70 degree pitch angle on it. And yeah, I think it looks good. I rather like it. It keeps it in that old school sort of look, but it's a serious bit of wing. Just run a 70 litre fuel cell. It's got foam in it, halfway up, a nice little sump trap. They're just an eBay special, but it works really well. I've had no issue with it. It's been a great little fuel tank. And there's my A1000. I've got a stainless filter, which is cleanable, and then I've got another stainless after filter from the E85. They recommend you go stainless steel for filters. Great pump, no hassles there. It's been bloody brilliant. So that's it, guys. I could go on for another hour talking about it, but that's pretty much just glossing over the car. The ones that know about it, you know that there's a lot more going on with the car, but that's pretty much it in a nutshell. It's a fantastic feeling doing all your stuff yourself. And goodness me, guys, I never knew much when I first started going on this journey. In the last 6 years, I've learned an incredible amount of information and knowledge that goes into this circuit racing. You just can't compare it. It's so good. I love it. Any of you guys know that playing with cars, whether it be drag racing or circuit racing or whatever you're doing, anything to do with engines and mechanical stuff and developing your own car, there's no better feeling. It really is. It's just an amazing journey. And I'm just, to be honest, I'm only just feel like I'm just starting out with it all, and I can't wait to keep moving on with it and keep developing the car, because I've got some personal goals that I want to achieve, and I think I'm going in the right direction. All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. We're going on for nearly 30 minutes now. It's one of my longer ones. All right, folks. I'll put a vid up soon. I want to have a talk about my my little engine build. I've come up with some other little ideas I want to share with you. I think they're very interesting too. All right, guys. Catch you later.